Yeah, it's an evolution, Anna, right? There was a point in time where it wasn't balanced for me, and I paid a big price for that.
Yeah.
But now I would say the biggest shift is that I prioritize self-care.
Okay.
It's business used to be first, and
Yes.
at the cost of that was my health.
Hello and welcome again to the Healthy Hypergrowth Show, where in each episode we explore the intersection of entrepreneurship, leadership, and health. I'm Anna C. Mallon, your host, and today I'm thrilled to have Peter Goldstein with me, the CEO of Exchange Listing LLC and a member of the Forbes Finance Council, and so much more. Peter is an experienced entrepreneur, investor, and mentor with a seriously proven track record and has listing companies on stock exchanges, capital markets, mergers, and acquisitions. Peter is passionate about helping companies grow and scale sustainably while also advocating for the importance of physical and mental well-being in the fast-paced world of entrepreneurship. Peter, thank you so much for making the time to come onto the show with me. I'm really, really thrilled to have you here. First off, how are you doing, Peter?
Hi, Anna. I'm really great. It's as you know, we're together in Amsterdam, although we're in different locations. And it's a beautiful day here. I started my day with a workout, and I just finished some healthy nutrition and the meditation before the video cast here. So I'm excited to be with you and anxious to have a very productive and dynamic conversation.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background? How have you become interested in entrepreneurship and finance?
Yeah, I'm really what I would say probably categorized as a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company in my 20s. Actually, my 24th birthday, I went down, I was living in New York City, to City Hall on Center Street and got my first formal business license. Although I feel like I've been in business since I was old enough to walk, like I was always doing something. So I have a lot of integral kind of, I would almost call it intrinsic self-motivation. I always saw myself as a business owner and an entrepreneur, and it's just been a personal kind of goal and aspiration. And now I would say after all these years, it's really just a lifestyle for me that I have been able to use with all the traditional characteristics that go with entrepreneurship, persistence, vision, the risk-taking, the passion, those things. And exchange listing is, I would say, a culmination of my career. I started it about 4 years ago now, and it is designed as a platform with a turnkey solution specifically for entrepreneurs in what I would call micro-cap or small-cap companies, earlier stage growth companies that want to go public through an initial public offering to access the U.S. capital markets for growth capital and for listing and the other benefits that come along with being a senior exchange traded company on whether that's NASDAQ or the New York Stock Exchange. So we have clients all over the world. There's no geographic limitations to what I do. There's actually no sector limitations to what I do. So part of the joy and my work and my business is I get to work with dynamic CEOs from all different industry sectors. And the commonality is that they're emerging growth companies that are looking to access, capital and list on a senior exchange.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Sounds like it's industry agnostic at various different stages. I'm curious though, before diving more into, other topics, if you can tell us a little bit more about that traction. Do you look for a specific ARR, or are you also dealing with pre-revenue? Just a little bit more on that might be interesting to know for our viewers.
Yeah, we've worked with pre-revenue, or I would say the exception to that pre-revenue is going to be more traditional in life science, because projects take longer to develop and go through regulatory, approval and such. But even there, we look for industry acceptance. That medical device company that I'm working with now has early traction. It's been cleared by the FDA. It's got very strong medical components and support to it, medical advisory board. When we went out into the industry to kind of fact check and stress test, is this a viable product? And it fills a need that isn't currently there. Right. This is a product that works with children who have a neurological component of firing in with a device that's FDA approved. There's nothing else in the market, and there's a growing field of right now about 10 million children in the US that don't have a medically approved solution. So even though the revenue is very, very small, we know that upon the capitalization of the company, that their ability to scale has been demonstrated and testable. So they're all a little bit different. And I think that that's an example of a pre-revenue, the other companies that we look at. And I think one of the interesting things for your audience is that there was a big misbelief on Wall Street when .com kind of bust happened, right? We're going back 20 years now. So those of us that lived through it and remember it, those were a lot of early stage, pre-revenue, early revenue companies, and many of them blew up, right? They didn't survive. And that gave now this kind of myth to Wall Street that, oh, if you're early stage or you don't have significant revenue, that you can't go public. And it's just not true. I tend to work with companies that are wanting alternatives to venture capital, the world that you live in, you know, from a regular point, or that they are looking for alternatives to traditional kind of financing routes and private equity and want to utilize public venture capital, if you will, public company financing to be able to bring their growth while they're maturing and developing as public companies. So it is a very unique situation that people don't realize. You can go early stage revenue and then demonstrable growth as a public company. You don't need to be 100 million in revenue, showing 20% EBITDA and 30% year-over-year growth.
I hosted a little intimate dinner with some of the leading investors. You know, we had regional investors, North Zone there, and Endite, and you know, even Sequoia, quite a few of them there. And it was really interesting. I mean, it was a very intimate dinner that I was able to organize, and, you know, just to facilitate some of the conversations around the market changes and all the things that are going on, all the challenges. And one of the things that came up was interesting was that, you know, there was obviously so much investment into early stage companies where there was a huge user base, right? And so, you know, millions of users that were demonstrated pre-revenue on a sort of a freemium model. But increasingly now, especially sort of after COVID, I think there were certain interesting COVID related investments there as well. Realized that, you know, actually that is pretty hard to monetize. And so there is a bit of a shift. I would say it is quite a big difference as, you know, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, into looking more and more for revenue generating early stage companies versus, you know, those that even if they have 70 million users, which is of course amazing and has certainly validation and a form of traction, but not necessarily the monetization of that, right?
Agreed. And I think that's also like what we've seen even in the last 2 years. And in 2021 was a very robust IPO market, best market in 20 some odd years.
Yes.
In 2022 and into 2023, it's one of the worst IPO markets in over 30 years.
Yes.
So a lot of what's changed, this is the sentiment of what you're referring to around investors that want to see fundamentals now.
Yes.
And that they know that they can cash flow out of their investment, a demonstrable way that a company is going to have, you know, a healthy balance sheet and a healthy cash flow. That's the impetus to provide a return on investment. So it definitely has changed. The marketplace is constantly shifting, but that's one of the fundamental, I think, you know, aspects of what's different now than even just a few years ago.
And I, you know, have the pleasure of dipping in and out of the due diligence process here and there, you know, obviously work with angel investors as well as VCs. Now that I, you know, work for a technical company, also look at the technical due diligence side of things. Of course, my background is very much looking into the team, founder dynamics, really understanding, you know, how can we predict, you know, early stage entrepreneur profiles. But recently I had on the show Sebastian Borak, who set up the Founders Foundation in Germany and who's also a serial entrepreneur like yourself. And in conversation, we came up with this health due diligence, which of course is very sensitive because, you know, certainly if you have a health issue that you're born with, we're not talking about any of such things or disabilities, anything like that. It's more a question of, he was saying that, you know, he's ran a lot of accelerator programs as well and realized that a lot of the times where he was referring to the bad lever of a company, oftentimes it was related to health issues. And it was, you know, he was drawing upon his own experience. And as you know, you and I met sort of on our health journey as well, not making the best health choices. And at the end of the day, he was saying, look, we're looking for people who are able to demonstrate as well that they have maybe a grit in the sports that can demonstrate that they can endure something with their body, or that have the discipline to be healthy, because we need to make sure that obviously the team and the company, which ultimately is run by people, still together with AI increasingly, but still by people, stay healthy. So curious to know, Peter, I mean, this is not like a official term, but does founder and team health ever play a part in your due diligence?
It does, and I think it's not as formal of a due diligence factor, right? Like we have our traditional checklist that we go through, but I think we look for three things, and probably similar in the way of looking at capabilities, right? Does leadership possess and the team possess? And I focus more on the C-suite, right, than in the work that I'm doing. Do they really possess the capabilities? And then that would be followed on by the experience in their sector to be able to have a track record of growth that's demonstratable. The one that I think is probably the most subjective there is integrity, and I think it's a form of health. It's not as easy to define, but we really look deep into the culture and want to understand kind of the integrity level of leadership. So because our success, much like any other investor or in our sense, in a partner, is really tied to the ability to have leadership implement what it is that we're working on. I work on almost like a performance-based model. We take mostly equity. So we don't reach our goal of monetizing the equity on an exchange. We have spent, could be 12, 18, 24 months without getting a complete ROI. So, we're looking at, and we have ways that we work with to assess the senior team, right? And as we talk a little bit more about that looking for that cohesiveness that's going to be a partnership, and integrity is a marker that can be defined differently by different people. But for us, it's directly related to the performance, to the track record, to the qualifications, and then that cohesiveness of the C-suite team with the rest of the business, as well as the board of directors. And then for us to be able to find a way to quantify that. And I have my own personal, I guess, focus areas that I'm happy to expand on. I wish there was a way to really measure that, so that when you're getting into business with somebody, that there's a form of integrity there that will carry through the ups and downs, because business is never straightforward. It's never as easy and as simple of a straight line to success as we want it to be. And when you're reaching those challenging times, integrity can be the differentiator. So it's a different form maybe of the team health that you might be referring to.
Values driven as well.
100%.
But I want to shift the conversation a little bit more towards you again, Peter. You do so much. You obviously, balance the demands of running a successful business. I know that you're traveling all around the world. I'm lucky that you're in Amsterdam at the moment. Next day, you might be, in the US. So how do you balance this with maintaining your health and well-being?
Yeah, it's an evolution, Anna, right? There was a point in time where it wasn't balanced for me, and I paid a big price for that. Now I would say the biggest shift is that I prioritize self-care. It's business used to be first, and at the cost of that was my health and somewhat of my own mindset and well-being. Now the shift for me is around prioritizing. So as we were talking, exercise, nutrition, self-care are non-negotiables for me. They're structured, they're treated like top priority, even in my calendar and in my schedule. And I hold those as the most important practices, because in the same kind of analogy of, put on your oxygen mask first if you're in a plane accident, it's the same. If as founders and as leaders, if we are taking better care of ourselves, we're better able to take care of the organizations, the stakeholders, and those that we serve. Yeah,
I love that. I mean, I'm completely with you. As you know, I've had, also, I'm, high performer, crazy global person builder, and also had quite a big health crisis of sorts, where, I had a fall down the stairs, but didn't take care of that because I'm just, crazy driven and love my work so much and deprioritized healthcare. I mean, I am also a mother of two, so was obviously prioritizing that over health as well. But ultimately, I ended up having quite serious issues with my memory and my brain, my central nervous system, and in that process, obviously wasn't sure where the problem originated from initially. So went through quite a lot of investigation, understanding, how well have I been taking care of myself, found out that I haven't been taking care well of myself. Of course, then in the end found out that this fall that I had basically shifted the bottom of my spine, the coccyx, which was directly related to my brain and central nervous system. But in that process, really realized that it was pretty dramatic for me, because in that moment, and I call it moment now, but it was several months where my brain wasn't working. And that was the scariest thing I've ever experienced in my entire life, because that's, the central organ that makes everything happen. And so, like you, I now realize that without the health, there really is nothing. Peter, do you think that we have to fall so hard in order to learn that lesson? Or what are some of the things that we could perhaps share with people who are much younger than us?
So Anna, first off, thanks for sharing your story, because that being vulnerable and sharing the hardship that you went through also makes it easier for me to talk about some of my own, which I think is also part of our, role as leaders in developing, the ability to help others so that they don't end up in the same or similar situations. Yours was, obviously a very, unique and just difficult situation to find yourself in. Mine a little bit differently. It probably built up over time by not paying attention to my health. And I went through some very tough in the Great Recession in the US. I was caught in that hardship financially. I was very fortunate to have great success previously and have made a lot of money in my life. And like many entrepreneurs, there's peaks and valleys and ups and downs. But after the financial hardship of the Great Recession, I found myself in a health crisis. And I'm very fortunate. I feel like I'm lucky to be alive and here talking with you. I had a 90% blockage in the lower left ventricle, which is what they call the widowmaker, and was hours away from, basically potentially, losing my life. So that's 6 years ago now. And that's something that I would never want, like what you went through or what I went through, anybody to have to realize, wow, now you have to prioritize health. Yeah. So I had a double whammy. I had a financial hardship and I had a health crisis. Wow. And I think the outcome of that, Anna, is that hardship is one of the greatest teachers, and in my case, motivators to live differently. And I would hope that nobody would have to go through that extreme, right? And I think one way to do that is to just realize that, you can take actions every day to increase your health and your longevity and your wellness that don't require a major health issue. And then if and when you do have something, and hardship comes in many ways, it's not just health, right?
Of course.
There's relationships, there's business, there's a whole gamut.
And they're all interrelated, aren't they? Yeah.
Most definitely. And more so than we all probably realize, and I think that's also part of an awakening, if you will. So I think, for all of us, it's to be informed, to have community around us that can also be supportive of where we are and being truthful with ourselves and with others. And then to have that, structure inside of what's important to us individually, inside of whether that's purpose, life purpose or business goals or whatever that may be, to elevate yourself to know that, health and well-being has a critical place in your ability to perform as a leader and really as a part of any contribution that you're making to the organizations that you're a part of.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think like what I'm taking away, hopefully for some of you, is I would invite everyone listening or viewing here today just to open up, like you said, Peter, be vulnerable, share it. You realize that really everyone is human and everyone has gone through some form of hardship. And what I'm trying to get at with a little bit on the journey with this show is to find data that correlates that health and business success as well, so that hopefully, because of a lot of us are very, data driven, then hopefully that will be an argument that will get more of us to do those little things that you say every day before it gets too dramatic and we get the learning from, from a sad incident, I suppose.
Correct. Well, Anna, there's so much data available now, and the advancements inside of what the field that you're talking about, not just on the AI and the data side, but just in the medical field itself.
Yes.
The knowledge, and you can take the last 5 years to where we are now, it's somewhat unimaginable what we'll look like in 5 years from now.
I agree. Yeah.
With all of the data and knowledge combined with AI, and then the integration of that on a personalized basis, and I think there's as we talked about having a community, I think the other side of it is hiring professionals. Like I have a team now to help support me, because it
likewise
takes a village. And I've realized,
yes, I'm with you 100%.
Cannot and should not be trying to do all of this, on our own. And I think that's an entrepreneurial kind of weakness that we tend to think we're superhuman. And in a lot of ways we are, but we also have to have a support structure.
Absolutely.
And so I'm a huge believer now in prioritizing not just the self-care, just like you have a business advisor, you have a board of directors, you have, your advisory board. Look at the same thing on the health and wellness side.
Yeah.
And take professionals that are going to hold you accountable, that are going to push you to reach the next level of where your own intrinsic motivation lies. Like, it's one thing to be able to have a set of goals. I think as entrepreneurs, we are often mindset of goal-oriented and look forward towards that with that intrinsic motivation, but then to be with the right professionals, the right community, and to combine that intrinsic motivation to accountability and performance. Now you have set yourself up for reaching that higher level of celebrating those wins along the way, learning, adapting, and then just that mindset of I'm going to surround myself with people in different forms along the way to help support my journey.
Couldn't agree more. And you're absolutely right. As entrepreneurs, knowing how to keep it lean, it can be a weakness for sure not to seek that help. So love that. Want to end with that and say really, really big thank you, Peter, for taking the time to come to the show and to share your insights. I think you've got quite a powerful and inspirational story. So I'm really honored to share it with the community. And I want to thank the viewers and listeners for listening into the Healthy Hypergrowth Show today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with your friends and colleagues. Don't forget to tune in to the next episode, where we'll look into more insights and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers like Peter Goldstein. Yours truly, Anna C. Mallon, and I hope to see you in person for another coffee in Amsterdam soon, Peter.
My pleasure, Anna. Thanks so much for having me. It's really great. I love the mission that you're on. I'm 100%, with you and with the community, and in realizing, a higher quality of life, health, wellness, and business performance.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you soon.
Thank you,
Bye,
Anna.
Peter.
Well, cheers.